risking their lives to get the news out, whether it's been in Lebanon, whether in Gaza, whether in Baghdad. They've done what it takes, and some have paid with their lives, as we saw last week in Libya. So it is a great honor to introduce our guest to give us the perspective of ALJazeera's coverage of the revolutions in the Arab world. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, John. That was a speech by our general manager of ALJazeera network, and the director of news of ALJazeera. In ALJazeera, however, we consider that ALJazeera Arabic is ALJazeera, because that's where it all started in 1996. After hearing the speech, I don't really know what I should be saying and where I should start, because a lot of the things that I was thinking about talking, I think I've said in the speech, and I don't want to repeat that. I assume that you are mostly interested in the coverage that we are doing to big events that are happening in the Arab world. However, I will try to be brief and give you the chance to ask questions or to comment. And if there are any issues that you are interested in, then I would be very happy to answer the questions. So in order to make it brief, let me start maybe from now. That is what we are doing in covering the Libyan uprising that's going on there. Before the event, the latest event, that is the 17th of February, event started, we saw people in the streets in Tripoli and maybe some other places, so we were told, people supporting the government, the system of Gaddafi in the street, calling ALJazeera's name, criticizing ALJazeera, shouting against ALJazeera, calling in Arabic ALJazeera al-Haqira. We hadn't gone there. We were not doing anything. We hadn't started covering the events because the event was not there yet. We were waiting for the 17th to know what was going to happen. Yet, al-Gaddafi people started shouting against ALJazeera, saying that, or thinking that they can convince people in Libya that ALJazeera was the one that was going to start the revolution, or is starting a revolution. As you heard our general manager saying, ALJazeera is not about starting revolutions. It's a media institution, it's a media outlet, and we do what all media should be doing, that is covering news and presenting the truth as much as we can get to it, to the people, to our audience, no more, no less. So when the event started, we're covering the Arab League meetings or something very neutral, far away from touching any issue that the government doesn't like. We were not happy with that kind of coverage, but we wanted to keep our presence there just to see if we can move slowly toward the better coverage of the time. But when this event started, these people disappeared. One of them escaped the country, one of them went back to his tribe to cover because they were afraid they will be picked up by the police and put in jail, even though they were not doing anything. And we said, that's fine, it's not a problem. But ALJazeera was going to cover what was going on there. How does ALJazeera do that? How it has been doing that? I believe the new media has a lot to do with it. The new media has provided anybody, or can provide anybody who wants actually to get the news out there with the ability to get the truth of what's going on. Of course, with a little bit of work, you have to choose to be selective the people you are working with, because sometimes people can report things that are not happening, or corrupt the news in a way that works for themselves. If you want to save your credibility, you need to deal with what's coming from the thousands of people who want to send us videos, pictures, information. You have to deal with them in a very professional way. We had already trained a team in our newsroom and outside in some of our offices, a team of young men who are very well qualified in using the new media tools, and we trained them in how to get this news and how to be sure that what you are getting is right, and how to get the specifics from each one who contacts ALJazeera to give us news. This, of course, has paid off, starting with Tunisia, going through Egypt, now in Libya. Now in Libya, we are still not able to report from Tripoli and all the area that is controlled by the forces of Gaddafi. But from the rest of the country, in the eastern part of Libya, in Benghazi and Bayla, etc., we have our reporters there, because the moment there was, we saw the possibility of getting some of our reporters in, that's what we did. The equipment was there, the reporters were there, the skills to deal with this kind of situation, which is very tense and sometimes very dangerous, were there. And we were probably the first to bring to the audience pictures from the field, to have our people there having interviews with them live from the field, and getting a lot of guests from the people who led the revolution or had led the revolution, who organized the events there, talking to ALJazeera live. We have hundreds, I would say, if not thousands, of people from different towns, from different cities, who were waiting for our calls to talk to us, to tell us about what's going on, sometimes live and sometimes just giving us information to use in our news. Again, every piece of news had to go through a lot of scrutiny before it got on the screen. We probably made a few mistakes, and that's impossible not to happen in these kind of situations, especially when you have a very well organized team, probably in Tripoli, from as far as we know, whose work was disinformation and trying to actually trick the media to say what's wrong so they can say later on, you see, these people are not telling the truth. We had one or two experiences, people calling, saying, you know, we are in big trouble, and we resisted putting them on screen, but when we had so many of them calling, like from Tripoli, we took the news and saying that this is what these people are saying, we cannot confirm the truth of it. But still, we wouldn't have done it in a different situation where, for example, our reporters are there. But we had to do it in some cases. However, I believe that the overwhelming amount of work that we did, coverage, was very accurate and was very comprehensive. This, of course, in Egypt, the situation got really nasty when the government started using extreme power against the people, and then the people found themselves in some situations, found themselves pushed to using arms to defend themselves. This became a different kind of game. It's different from what happened in Egypt or what happened in Libya, where the situation was more peaceful, or less violent, let's say. And there was violence in Tunisia, violence in Egypt, but it was not the way that's happening in Libya. In Tunis, actually, the situation was not better in terms of our presence there. Tunisia never accepted any kind of office of ALJazeera to be there, or a correspondent, or anybody to cooperate with us. We succeeded a few years before the revolution started to have somebody working with us there as a stringer, without announcing himself to be working for ALJazeera. He was harassed and arrested several times, but still he worked. He's a very brave man. He's one of the very well-known human rights activists in there. That says something about human rights work. This building has a lot to do with. And we found him very helpful during that revolution. But the people who really provided us with information and videos, with pictures, with constant contact, were the new media people, the young people who started the revolution, who started the call for the revolution on Facebook, for example, Twitter, or whatever. And even though the government tried there, as it happened in Egypt and as it's happening now in Libya, for example, to cut off the lines of communications by doing all kinds of things to prevent people from calling, still we had the means to communicate with people, to get enough information to make a 24 hours coverage of what was going on in Libya. Most of the day, most of the 24 hours was, for Tunisia, was about Tunisia. And we were a little bit surprised that actually we had the ability to do that. We were a little bit worried about how to fill this 24 hours, rolling coverage of what was going on. The same thing happened in Egypt. We had quite a big office, large office in Egypt. But the second day after the revolution started, when the Egyptian authorities saw the coverage that we were doing, they came, closed down the office, withdrew all the accreditation from our reporters, and made it very difficult for us to take in any kind of equipment. So we had to use very intricate ways to get equipment to the country. But our reporters, most of them at least, and the ones that we sent later on to the country, did a magnificent job. They were not only covering Cairo, they were not only in Tahrir Square 24 hours a day with the cameras on the people, protected by the people. Police were looking for our reporters by the people who wouldn't allow them to get close to us. So the people knew what they could do to help the media. So they were not only helping us with all the new media tools that they were using, but they were also protecting us physically. However, in some cases, the police got to our reporters, arrested quite few of them. Some of them spent a few days in jail. Some of them spent a few hours. Our equipment was taken quite often from our reporters. Some of them were beaten up by the Baldajis in different places. So that was in Cairo, it was in Suez, in Alexandria, in Mansoura, in many different places. Our reporters were there. But when we didn't have a reporter, we had the young people of that region working as reporters for us. They were calling us, sending us pictures, sending us videos, telling us what was going on in quite a very, very detailed way, in a way that actually regular reporting wouldn't do, because you cannot be everywhere. But these people are everywhere, and they are willing to work with you when you have that kind of credibility. And in some cases, we would get, for example, a film from somewhere, a 2-minute video. And because we have so many of them, we don't put it on. For a while. The people would call and said, why are you forgetting about Dimyat or about Al-Fayoum or about, in Egypt? The same thing happened in Tunisia. So we were trying also to keep up with all the information, all the material that we were getting. I would say that one of the big problems that we faced, and we also had to work very hard to overcome, was the disturbance of our broadcasting to the country by these authorities. So 9sat would completely put ALJazeera out of its bouquet, and therefore the Egyptians wouldn't be able to watch us. And what is the use of reporting from Egypt that extensively if the people don't see you? So we tried to find different frequencies that the authorities there, or 9sat, couldn't actually prevent people from using. And we found such a great spirit of, I don't know, camaraderie, I believe that's the word in English. It's the support from many television channels who start broadcasting our broadcast live on their screen. We of course put on our screen that anybody who wants to broadcast our broadcasting is for free, is welcome, and therefore people were getting ALJazeera through different other channels, in addition of course to other means, through computers, through etc. So I would say that in spite of the fact that this government had the power to interfere with all means of communications that were very important for us, ALJazeera continued to do a very comprehensive, very good reporting, I believe, that helped those people to feel that their voices are heard and their actions are seen, and they have the protection of the camera in many cases. And as our general manager mentioned, about more than one call actually from people coming from Egypt or from other places saying, please keep the camera on during the night or during certain times, because like what's happening now in Yemen, you know, in Sahat al-Taghyir, when they say, please keep the camera on because we know that the police or the Baltajis are coming to hurt us, and when they see the camera, it might be less. I mean, it doesn't stop them completely. If you remember, probably one of the most dramatic Hollywood-like scenes that you watched on ALJazeera in Sahat al-Tahrir in Egypt, when the Baltajis came on horses and camels to attack people, you know, in Sahat al-Tahrir, and they were beating people. Of course, it was a very big scene from, looks like from the Middle Ages. And it was funny that the Egyptian television, within about less than 1 hour, they were talking about how ALJazeera was lying about the existence of such a thing like camels and horses in Midan al-Tahrir, in Tahrir Square. It just happened that while they were talking, actually the pictures were rolling on their own screen with camels and horses. So even when they tried to criticize ALJazeera, they didn't even know how to do it. They didn't know how to lie. So it was an interesting experience. The issue, of course, I mean, there are so many issues that we could talk about, but I believe it's better to let you ask if you have any questions, if you have any issues you want to discuss. You are welcome to it. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you very much for that overview of the day-to-day reporting of these historic moments. We now open the floor, please, sir.
Thank you very much. I would like just to ask about why are some countries like terrorism apply to those countries as well? But I see that there is like some sort of selective coverage with regard to those two countries. Do you think that if anything happens in those two countries, especially in Qatar, will ALJazeera cover that in the same manner it's covered Egypt and Tunisia? Thank you.
Okay. Prevent ALJazeera from going there. And we have been forbidden from entering Algeria for years and years and years. Actually, we had once, we opened an office, I believe, for a few weeks during the elections, and I believe 2004 or something. And after a few reports, they closed down our office because ALJazeera was reporting what was going on. For the moment now, if you are talking about now, I say this thing quickly about Algeria. Certainly there is no way that ALJazeera would find anything, editorially speaking, worth reporting and not reporting. It's impossible. If we get the information, and if we get, sometimes you need, in addition to the information, you need pictures, you need films. If we find them, we will put them on screen. There is no way that something happened and we don't do it. And actually, if you notice, one young man came out in the streets in Algiers, Bab el-Wad and Sindai, etc., a few months ago, and they did some violent acts, you know, like burning a few places, etc., throwing rocks on the police. We put on screen every single picture that we got, every single picture. But unfortunately, we have limited access to Algeria, because even reporters in Algeria, journalists themselves, and cameramen, people who have cameras, we tried to contact them to work for ALJazeera to help us, just cooperating, not representing ALJazeera, not just sending us pictures. They are afraid. And one day, one guy was brave enough to send us some pictures about students protesting in one place. And we put those pictures on screen. 2 or 3 Algerian newspapers said, how come that ALJazeera is reporting? Somebody is sending the pictures. You have to look for them. Who did this? Unfortunately, the media people were trying to push the government or the police to look for who is supporting ALJazeera, who is sending these pictures to ALJazeera. Every other time, for example, in the last few weeks, every Saturday, there's a group of people who are calling for change. They come out to the street and protest in one area or another. Every time, as soon as we get the videos, and we get them, by the way, through the internet, through, you know, those people who are filming and sending pictures to us, we put them on. However, we don't report extensively on this event because they are very small events compared to what's going on in the Arab world. One day somebody called me personally from Algeria and said, how come that you are not reporting? You know, there are more than 1,000 persons out there protesting. I said there are more than 2 million people in Tahrir Square. And people want to see, but we cannot move our camera. So editorially speaking, you have to put your priorities, you know, in order and decide accordingly. Not because there's anybody who tell us what to do. Nobody ever told us what to do or not to do about Algeria. I can assure you. Now about Qatar. Why Qatar is not in the news? It's very simple. There's not that much to report from Qatar. There's not that much worth reporting. In Qatar, there are a lot of interesting things going on, certainly, for the country, locally. And they are reported locally by the Qatari television. But they are not of interest to the international media, to even the Arab media, audience, I'm sorry, to the Arab audience or the international audience. They are not interested. We do report from Qatar when there is something. We do. And I believe that a lot of people who saw our interviews with, let's say, the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, when he was a Foreign Minister, now that he's the Prime Minister, were surprised that actually how much the interviewer was squeezing this guy, I mean, whom they thought was controlling ALJazeera. They used to think that the Prime Minister, even when he was not Prime Minister, he was Foreign Minister, he was the boss of ALJazeera. And when he was on one of our programs with Ahmed Mansour, we got so mad actually because of the questions. They were a little bit too excessive maybe, to the point that some people thought that it was done, it was a little bit overdone. There's no problem with reporting from Qatar whenever there is something happening in Qatar. And I think you will see, if something happened in Qatar, you will see ALJazeera there, the camera will be there reporting.
During the revolution, I stayed fixed 24 watching ALJazeera until 11th of February, when you covered the millions of Egyptians all over the region. I also commend you for the fantastic interview between Fahmi Huwaidi and Muhammad Hassanin Haikel. If people don't know Haikel, then he was or still is the most important media man in the Middle East, and Fahmi Huwaidi is one of the most important commentators in the Middle East. And ALJazeera at that time could not send its own anchorman to interview Haikel, so they used their friend Fahmi Huwaidi, who appears a lot on ALJazeera. So I commend you a lot for what you did for the coverage of the Egyptian revolution. My question is because lately, in the last couple of days, I don't have access to ALJazeera on the internet, not on television, on a computer. So I don't know how you are covering Bahrain. And I would like to know the differences in the coverage of Bahrain. And I would like you to state to us, was your cameraman who was killed near Benghazi really ambushed, or was it a mistake? We want to know the real circumstances of the killing of that camera.
And I will convey that to our people in the newsroom, inshallah. About what we are doing with Egypt now. Of course, since the first part of the revolution ended, because the revolution is continuing in Egypt, and the revolution started the uprising started in Libya, we have been focusing more on Libya rather than Egypt, for obvious reasons. There is more action there, people want to know, of course, we are all very interested in that. But at the same time, we understand how important covering Egypt is. That is, the revolution is still going on. The young men and women who started the revolution are saying we are not going away, that is, metaphorically speaking, till all the aims of the revolution are realized. It's obvious that as the Prime Minister of Egypt, the new Prime Minister, who was indirectly appointed by the young ones, because they gave his name to the High Military Council, who said that there is a counter-revolution in the country, and we have to be aware of what's going on. So ALJazeera is trying to keep up the work with Egypt, but less than before, of course. We have, throughout the day, 1 or 2 reports, interviews about Egypt with the bulletins. And at the same time, we have 1 hour, we call it one window on the Egyptian revolution, نافذة على الثورة المصرية. Every day from 10 to 11 Qatar time, Mecca time. And during this hour, we have some reports about what's going on in the country in relation to the revolution and the aftermath of what happened. And at the same time, raise one issue, very important issue, like the issue of the revision of the Constitution, or the question of the elections, or the, one of these big issues. We raise it with experts, Egyptian experts on the issue. So we keep up the discussion of what's going on. So Egypt is not, hasn't disappeared from the screen. In addition to that, of course, ALJazeera Mubashara, because ALJazeera is not only one channel. So when we talk about what we do on ALJazeera Arabic, there is ALJazeera Mubashara, which is in Arabic, which is ALJazeera Direct. We can put things that are happening as, for example, this conference here could be put on ALJazeera Mubashara. People watch it as live, as they want. In addition to English, of course, and we have also, every night now, in Egypt itself, we have ALJazeera Mubashara Egypt. That is from 7 o'clock till, I believe, 1 o'clock or so, up to midnight in Egypt, which deals only with the Egyptian issues. And it's being watched in Egypt very widely, and including some of the people there, Ibrahim Isa, who is presenting a whole program there. an Egyptian journalist who was fired from his position before the revolution because of his position toward certain issues. So with Egypt, we are still working, covering very well. Your second question, if you want, just to our cameraman, he's the head of the cameraman unit in ALJazeera, who wanted to go to Libya, who volunteered to go to Libya, even though he hadn't had to, he didn't have to. He was ambushed. He actually in a car. We believe that there were people following him and the team, our team, for a few days. Because our reporter who was not killed, told us about their observations. But they thought maybe they were just afraid. But the day they were killed, they went out to cover certain issue, certain event, outside about 40 kilometers from Benghazi. When they were coming, when they got close to Benghazi, a car behind them came with armed people and started shooting at them. They knew them exactly. So they killed our cameraman instantly, injured one guy, and the other one was sick, alhamdulillah, and they escaped, they ran away. In Bahrain, first, when the event started in Bahrain, we didn't have, in Bahrain, we were thrown out. Our office was closed, our correspondent was thrown out of the country before the event started. I mean, that's for more than a year. We tried to get there, and it was very difficult to get permission to send anybody. Finally, they agreed that one of our reporters would go there, and he did go. And we started reporting. But even from the first day, we were reporting from Bahrain, but getting just the limited pictures and information that comes from some people who were just helping ALJazeera. Some bloggers, some people sending pictures on Facebook, etc. But when our reporter was there, then we start getting reports every day, extensively. Sometimes we have the camera there for a long time. And we are still reporting every day what's going on, reporting, putting on the screen all the pictures that we get. But again, when you don't have an office there, you will be limited, regardless of that. At the same time, if people think that we are not dealing with Bahrain the way we dealt with Tunisia or with Egypt, it's because at the same time we have Libya and we have Yemen going on, where there are hundreds of people out there in the streets, or we have fighting like in Libya, and we have massacres like in Sana'a and in some other places. So we have so many events. Tunisia was a revolution of its own by itself, so we completely focused on Tunisia. We cut down to maybe 1 hour a day or something on Tunisia when we moved to Egypt, because it was the big event. And so now we are divided into pieces almost, trying to cover all these parts that have big events going on.